Sleep, it's a major problem for a lot of people. There's all kinds of different things that can contribute to a poor quality of sleep, everything from our lifestyle to our diet to what we're doing late at night to what our habits are. But there is one other factor, and that is environmental noise. Maybe you're sleeping with someone who is a snorer, or maybe you've got neighbors that like to make noise, or a dog next door that loves to bark. Whatever it is, there are a lot of environmental sounds that can definitely disrupt our quality of sleep. For the last several years, I've been exploring the various options from Soundcore, the Sleep A20, the Sleep A30s, as they have come out, because I am one of the people for whom having something in my ear, particularly something like a podcast or an audiobook, really helps me when my mind is racing, for my mind to relax. And typically within a few minutes, I'm going to drop off. And so I have always been interested in the idea of sleep-focused earbuds that are designed even if you are a side sleeper. It's for that reason that I was interested when the company Fitnexa reached out to me about their SomniPods 3, because I haven't really explored any of the alternative to Soundcore's option. And, clearly having just experienced one brand and what their offerings are, I don't really have a broad frame of context. And so I was interested in looking at these, and I've spent now about 6 weeks with the SomniPods 3, and I'm here today to give you my findings and whether or not you should consider these as an alternative to some of the more well-known options. So we're going to dive in today and look at the active noise canceling properties, at the audio quality, the app itself, the whole ecosystem surrounding the SomniPods 3. I say the whole ecosystem because one of the things that Fitnexa is really big on is the whole app experience. And that in itself is where I believe either the greatest strength or the greatest weakness lies, depending upon what kind of user you are. We'll dive into all of that in today's review. So let's take a look at what's in the box and a little closer look at the actual earbuds themselves. They claim these to be the thinnest of the available earbuds. They're only 9.9 millimeters thick, and they only weigh in at 3.3 grams. And comparing them to the Soundcore Sleep A30s, I would say looking at them, they are very slightly smaller than what the Sleep A30s are. The packaging itself is environmentally friendly chic these days. All the materials are very intentionally designed to give you the impression of being eco-friendly. The most important thing here is that we have got a wide variety of tips and then also wings to help to get that perfect fit for sealing off in your ear canal. There's a total of 10 different tips that are given here. And so we have got 2 different shapes. We've got 5 different sizes here. And so if you experiment with those, you should be able to find something that fits perfectly. We do have a USB-A to USB-C cable for the charge case itself. I did note that the charge case can be charged on a wireless charger, which is a nice feature that I don't think is supported by the Sleep A30 in my test. Now, according to Fitnexa's rating, the battery life is good for up to 6.5 hours with ANC and audio playback. The sleep mode, they say, can last up to 12 hours. And so there's a little bit of some smart tweaking that goes on there to where ANC isn't necessarily running all the time, and audio certainly isn't running all of the time. I find that if I am just looking at the app, it suggests that with 100% charge, if I have just normal playback, it shows 10 hours for kind of like daytime type use, or 5.1 hours with ANC. Now, that is because there is a little bit different a process for the ANC during the day, normal use, and then the sleep mode ANC. 2 different kind of calculations, and obviously the one for the day or normal use is using up a little bit more battery life. Now, these do have that external microphone that's working there can, in fact, be used for making calls as well. And I found that in that mode, I could hear the person fine if I had the buds in, and I heard no complaints from them over the way that they could hear me. This does support some of the different kind of hi-fi codecs, so high resolution audio, LDAC. It's got Snapdragon sound processing as a part of it. But at the same time, I always note that these type of earbuds, they just don't have as rich of sound as normal larger earbuds that have more room for processing for the actual speaker, and even a little bit more of an acoustic chamber to allow for a richer, fuller sound. You just can't get all of that in something that is this small. These are IPX4 rated, and so that's not designed to drop them in water, but IPX4 means that they can be sweated on, it could be light splashing, so if you're out in the rain, you probably don't need to worry about that, but certainly you're not going to want to fully immerse these in water. The MSRP runs at $189.99 for them. I noticed that they're currently available, of course I'm filming the week of Black Friday, they're currently available for $119.99. Now, maybe the sales won't always be Black Friday level, but that does tell me that there are going to be sales and you are going to be able to get them less than the MSRP, which makes them considerably cheaper than a lot of the competition. I also noted that there is an 18-month warranty along with lifetime support there. That 18-month warranty is fairly generous for something like this, so that obviously is good news. So arguably the most important aspect of testing this is coming down to the active noise cancellation. Early generations of sleep-oriented earbuds did not feature active noise cancellation, but just passive noise cancellation. And so it is, and the technology just wasn't there. I mean, having active noise cancellation requires employing microphones and processors to help to eliminate that sound. There just wasn't room in these, tiny little earbuds in earlier generations. However, as technology has improved, we are seeing not only active noise cancellation, but increasingly better active noise cancellation. And one thing that I have noted with these and other brands is that is actually improving through firmware updates as they're able to give better algorithms that are able to become increasingly effective as technology passes. So getting over-the-air updates is a nice addition here. Now, when it comes to the SomniPods 3, there are two microphones. One of those is an externally oriented microphone that is analyzing the environmental sound itself. The second is internally oriented, that is actually calculating what sound is reaching into the auditory canal itself. And so between those two things, the processor is working to help to reduce sound as much as possible. In this case, they claim up to a 42% sound reduction. Now, that's tested within a laboratory and not your bedroom, so obviously your mileage may vary, as the saying goes. But I would say that it is able to dramatically reduce the amount of environmental sound going on. So that is accomplished through a couple of means. First of all, obviously the whole idea with these is that they are to fit very tightly down into the ear canal itself. And so that is why they give you so many different fit options, is that you're wanting to find as perfect a fit as possible so you're getting as tight a seal as possible. And that does have a few relevant points that I'll come back to in just a moment. And so once you've gotten that tight fit, which is what the early generations, that's basically all that they were offering up outside of the white noise. But in this case now we have the addition of the active noise cancellation, and between the combination of those things, Fitnexa claims that it can filter out about 99% of environmental noise. I wouldn't say that I consider that to be completely accurate, but I will say this. The most common way that I use these is actually in taking a nap. And because it's now winter outside, my napping has moved from the outdoors into the indoors. So if I am right here, I'm at the spot where I typically nap here. I'm reclined back. And because this is right in the middle of the living room and the kitchen is right over there, it means that my wife, she'll be doing her thing. She might be preparing a meal or whatever's going on. And so what I can say is that when I have these in and I have active noise cancellation on and I've got a podcast or something going that I'm listening to, it reduces the environmental sound enough that I very quickly drop off and I'm not distracted by whatever that she's doing. So that in itself is great. Fortunately, she's not as in big of a snoring phase as she has been at the past. And while this will not completely eliminating snoring sounds, it kind of reduces it down to just more of a faint rumble that most people find tolerable enough that they can go to sleep and you're not going to be in that miserable state where you're trying to pull a pillow down over your head because you're being driven crazy by what's going out outdoors. Now, there is a caveat that I want to mention here, and that is because these have a very, very tight seal. If you get them fitted properly, they're eliminating a lot of noise already just by their fit itself. And unlike most full sizes, we'll call them ANC buds, there's no transparency mode here. So that means that you're really blocking out a lot of environmental sounds, including some environmental sounds that you might want to hear. And so if you should be listening to a baby monitor or something like that, they recommend that you don't wear these because it is, even if you have ANC off, it's going to block a lot of that noise. It also might block the sound of your alarm clock, and so that's why it is wise to employ the private alarm that you can have that will go through the buds right into your ear. So let's talk about that Fitnexa app for a moment, because this is designed to be more of an entire ecosystem. A lot of the marketing centers around the fact that this is AI powered, and so that includes being able to choose a coach and to set different priorities and to interact with their AI as a part of trying to get the best out of both your sleep quality and your general lifestyle. And so with that, you have the ability through the app to track exercise, to plan exercise, to even meal plan, to get AI suggestions for meals, better sleep strategies, all of the typical kind of fitness, health, lifestyle type AI things are incorporated into this. The app will track your sleep quality through the earbuds and then also give you some suggestions on how to improve that sleep quality. Now, the downside is that this is subscription based. It does come with a free 3-month trial, but if you're going to want to buy into that whole ecosystem, you are going to have to pay a further cost to do so. When I onboarded with this, and I hadn't had full communication with the company yet at that point, I actually found that to be the most frustrating process, because at the time I was just looking to actually find the controls to customize, the tap functions for the actual earbuds themselves. And so I felt like I was kind of trapped in a rabbit hole of it, trying to go into all these other things that I didn't actually want to do at the moment. I just wanted to get to the controls. They fortunately have had enough negative feedback that they have switched that since to where now you can enter into something like a guest mode where you're bypassing all of the AI lifestyle type stuff and can just get to the basic controls for the actual SomniPods themselves. And so in there you can access the full controls, you can get in there and you can tweak, the behavior when it comes to the tap functions, things like that. You can control the actual noise cancellation and settings in regards to that. You can go into equalization modes, all the typical things that you would expect for an app like this. And when just taking with that portion alone, all of it works fine. I have no complaints about that. But you might find it annoying if you don't want to buy into the whole experience. All right, let's talk about some things that I like, and then we'll talk about some things that I don't like after regular use for a while. I like the fact that we have both sleep ANC and then also a regular daytime type ANC. And again, like I said, it won't be as effective as full-size ANC buds, but it works, and it certainly does make a difference for that. I found that the wireless charging, I try it with all of these earbuds. I set the charger on the wireless charging pad just to see if something happens. I was pleasantly surprised that this did include wireless charging, which is a nice option. Your other alternative is to charge via USB-C, though they don't include an AC adapter for your USB-C. So you have the cable there, but you'll need to plug it either into an adapter or into a laptop, a computer, something to get that actual power coming through it. I would say one of the fringe benefits of having such a tight-fitting bud that's so low profile, there's no wing coming out, nothing protruding out of your ear, is that while the ANC isn't as effective, I actually find that they are better for things like cycling, something where you're moving faster and creating wind noise, because there is much less to create wind noise there. I find even with very good ANC buds, if something is sticking out there, it actually creates a wind noise that ANC can't keep up with. These being so low profile, they actually work quite well in that setting. Though, of course, I'll offer the same caveat. Be careful when you're effectively blocking out too much noise, because that could potentially be dangerous. On the price front, particularly at the moment, the price definitely undercut something like the Soundcore Sleep A30. And of course, the Soundcores are cheaper relative to some other options that are out there. And so it does seem to offer very good value for money. I also appreciate the fact that while the stated battery life doesn't sound like a full night's sleep, there's clever ways that they kind of work to extend the battery life itself. Your music or your audiobook can turn off at some specified point after you fall asleep, and the ANC will then adjust to the need. And so if there's not a lot of environmental noise, maybe it'll crank down the amount of ANC needed, or if there's none really needed at the moment, turn it off altogether. So what I found is after about 7-hour night of sleep, something fairly typical for me, I found that I had about 30% battery life indicated remaining when I woke up in the morning, which would indicate that if you sleep a little bit longer, 8 or 9 hours, you probably should get even sufficient to cover that entire duration. Now, obviously, that is a moving target, depending on how much audio you want playing, whether you have white noise playing in the background, because that is an option to help to further deplete environmental sound. You could have something like a white noise, and there's some programmed options you can have play during that sleep mode to further eliminate sound. All of those are factors that are going to affect battery life, but it does seem that they work the calculations to make it work, even though probably the actual size of the battery is not huge inside of them. So those are some of the things that I think are great about them. How about things that I don't like so much? Well, as you probably picked up when I alluded to it earlier, I found the app to be a bit of a rabbit hole. It really tries to suck you in to the whole subscription experience, and at least the first time that I onboarded, I couldn't find the off-ramp to that, and so I found that to be quite frustrating. Now it is easier to bypass that in the guest mode, but just be aware that if you don't want to fully buy into the whole app lifestyle, you might find that to be a less than thrilling aspect of the whole process there. I do find that as far as the actual touch of the materials, while they are soft touch, the whole thing doesn't feel quite as soft as what the materials on the Sleep A30 do. Everything here just feels just a little bit softer, a little bit more soothing on the ear. And so I would say that these are not quite as soft as the more expensive Soundcore options. I also find that sometimes in the middle of the night, I may not necessarily want to keep them in all night. And so if I'm waking up and I'm just like, I want to get these out of my ear, one thing I find is in the dark, in the middle of the night, the Sleep A30s actually have just a little bit of a light that guides you home there. It shows you where you should be popping in the earbud. There's nothing equivalent here, and so in the dark, you can be fooling around, not really seeing where you're oriented, and have a little bit harder time lining up to where the magnetic will pull it in and actually start the charging process. So I like that feature in the Sleep A30. I miss it here in the SomniPod 3. And finally, as is always the case, not really specific to these, sound quality is good, not great. Obviously you can tweak the equalization settings to try to get a sound that is pleasing to you, but it just doesn't have as rich or full a sound no matter what you do as a good quality, just regular ANC earbud does. And so if you go in expecting them to sound like top notch, you might be disappointed. If you have realistic expectations, you're going to be just fine with them. So my conclusion is that these are a suitable alternative to more expensive Sleepbuds. I feel like the active noise cancellation works fairly well for its intended purpose. They are comfortable enough for side sleepers. Most people, I think, are going to be fine, sleeping through the night with these in their ear. I would say that the person that is going to love these the most is someone who is looking for that whole AI app experience, kind of integrated into a whole health lifestyle type pursuit. And I think that you might really enjoy the AI integration. If you don't want all of that and you just want to control your earbuds, you might find the app a little annoying because it will feel like it's trying to do too much. And so at the end of the day, I would probably use that and maybe price as the two kind of deciding factors. If you like the cheaper price and you're interested in the whole app integration, great. They'll know that there's going to be some additional subscription cost down the road associated with that. And if you don't want that, they're still good, but there are other options that maybe take you less down that rabbit hole. If you want more information, check out the description down below, and I've got linkage to them there, some links where you can go and buy them or just research further. As always, thanks for watching. Have a great day and keep the sound out.